I think we have to talk about Matt DiBenedetto here, Kyle. This is the short end of the stick out of all this. He's the one guy out of this 4-person equation that is left on the outs. Keselowski knows where he's going. Cindric knows where he's going. Burton knows where he's going. DiBenedetto does not. And we kind of all expected with this that with Cindric having that opportunity to go to the 2 car and with
we thought it was
Keselowski
a blessing in disguise. Yeah,
we thought, DiBenedetto, why not stay? I mean, it seems like a perfect thing, but clearly they didn't see it that way, and he doesn't really bring the most funding compared to a Harrison Burton. So that's got to be a big factor in all of this as well. But at the end of the day, I would argue that he hasn't quite done enough. And of course, he's shown glimpses last season, finishing second consecutively at Las Vegas in both races. Those were very good results for him. But at the same time, he hasn't been able to put those results together across the board. And I would argue that if he had practice, he would be a much more complete and would get the results more often than he does right off the trailer with this no practice and qualifying format that we have the past 2 seasons. And it's very unfortunate, the circumstances. The guy can't catch a break, it seems. Left, right, and center, somebody's coming up through the pipeline that somebody else would rather have than Matt DiBenedetto. But he's outside the playoffs right now by a very considerable margin after Kurt Busch's victory at Atlanta. And it's going to take a win for him to make the playoffs. So that's going to be a very difficult task to do. But when we kind of found out that DiBenedetto was going to get this seat after vacating Paul Menard 2 seasons ago, that we could maybe see a win because Ryan Blaney got a win in that car at Pocono. So we've had similar expectations to get maybe one victory for Matt DiBenedetto, but he hasn't quite been able to break through. And he's shown some weaknesses on the road courses. Maybe that's down to the actual 21 car itself rather than the driver, I would argue. But at the same time, he just hasn't quite found the whole piece of the puzzle and put it all together on a consistent enough basis. And the points are basically evident of that. And he had a slow start to the season. I know he kind of turned the corner a little bit, but now he started to fizzle out once again. So your thoughts, Kyle, on Matt DiBenedetto, maybe a possible landing spot for him. Where does he go? There's a lot of obviously questions up in the air. We thought he would stay when we did our mid-season stuff, obviously 3K views as well. Shout out to that video if you haven't checked that out. It's way gone wrong now, but nonetheless, still give it a watch. But your thoughts, fun. Kyle, Matt DiBenedetto. This is a tough break for him.
Yeah, this is a bit of a heartbreaking one for him here. It did feel like DiBenedetto and the 21 were kind of this perfect marriage of sorts, with a mid-level team that has its moments near the top, with a mid-level driver that has his moments at the top. It felt like it was a perfect marriage between a team and a driver at similar levels. And unfortunately, it's only going to last 2 seasons here. And that's kind of been the running theme with these Wood Brothers cars. You look back to Ryan Blaney when he went full-time in 2016, 2017, moves on. Gone. Paul Menard, 2018, 2019, retires. 2020, 2021, DiBenedetto, and then he's out. So what I will say here is there were some highs and lows between these two. You look last season, making the playoffs, having a very good playoffs in terms of generating points. They actually finished 13th in the overall standings, which is the second best finish that they've had since coming back as a full-time team in 2016. The only one better was Ryan Blaney in 2017 when he, of course, won the Pocono race, went fairly deep in the playoffs, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So outside of that, DiBenedetto's 2020 season was better than Blaney's first season at the team, was better than both seasons Paul Menard had. This season, though, it was clear from the get-go that things just weren't clicking. And whether that's between Greg Irwin and Matt DiBenedetto, whatever it is, it was clear that things just weren't going well enough. And over the entire duration, they weren't good enough on road courses as well. And we kind of saw that at Road America recently, where they kind of changed things up, new crew chief, and looked a lot better. But the consistency hasn't been there this season. They've got back-to-back top 10s, which is great for them, but still just too late in the season to kind of salvage things on points, and obviously too late in the season to salvage things in terms of contracts. Again, I think if this is a Wood Brothers decision, I think they keep DiBenedetto, but because somebody like Harrison Burton was available, Ford and Team Penske wanted to make that move, and Wood Brothers just doesn't have kind of the saying power when they get everything from Team Penske and Ford anyways. So It's unfortunate because it was a great spot for DiBenedetto, and now he's a free agent where there isn't a lot of great situations available. You look at silly season and the spots that are available. We expect Tyler Reddick to be back in the number 8 car, so Richard Childress is full. Trackhouse, you don't really expect him to be an option there. He could end up being an option, but from things we've heard, it kind of looks like it's a long shot at Kurt Busch or Ross Chastain or maybe something else. In those, Eric Jones, we expect to be back in the 43. GMS, we don't even know if they're going to be full-time. So like you keep going down the list, 23-11, they're almost certainly getting Kurt Busch at this point based off of the things we've heard from people like Jordan Bianchi. Still in the open. If that doesn't end up happening,
then I think 23-11, right? That's basically what Kurt's options are.
So I feel like if Kurt somehow doesn't end up at 23-11, I feel like that could be an option for him, but I feel like that's like just a low percentage chance. Right? Yeah, that kind of stuff. So in terms of realistic landing spots, if Stuart Haas went away from Eric Almirola, could that be a spot? Yeah, but then you think about the sponsorship Almirola brings and the money that team needs, and DiBenedetto doesn't bring that. So he's probably not an option there.
Is Eric Almirola even breaking even with the amount of times he's had wrecks this season with the money that he's brought in?
I mean, I'm sure they're getting a bank from Smithfield. So
I'm sure they are, but I think the argument could be made 27th in points in that equipment, and that car has ended up on the record more times than not, it seems. So
yeah. No, believe me, I'm on the same page there, but I still think it's a long shot there. So like in terms of realistic landing spots, Trackhouse potentially. I think that one's more of a long shot than people give it credit, but we'll include that in the conversation nonetheless. 23-11.
That's maybe even less of a chance.
I actually think the opposite. I think it's more likely 23-11 would be, but I don't think either are like both of those I see as like
20%.
1%. Like honestly, like 1% chances. Okay. Like I think Kurt's going to 23-11, and I think Chastain's staying in Trackhouse unless they kind of
that would make a lot of surprising. Sense. Yeah.
And then so other than that, you're looking at a long shot at Stuart Haas or like a front row or even further back, because even a team like Spire doesn't have another charter that needs to be used up. So I think this could potentially, I know today on Sirius XM and all that stuff, he said that he doesn't want to go back to Xfinity trucks, that kind of thing, even though he actually never did trucks. Doesn't want to go down. He wants to stay in the Cup Series. That's where he feels his heart is. That's where he feels his talent level is. But looking at Xfinity, depending on what happens with that 22 Penske car, I think it shuts down. But if they decide to keep that open for sponsorship and whatnot, if you think about Colleague, you think about Joe Gibbs Racing with another seat. There's some interesting ties that could potentially be a landing spot for DiBenedetto. It's
better than nothing. There's some options down there.
Exactly. If he can swallow his pride, go to Xfinity, go dominate, go win races, go battle for a championship, prove that you're that level of driver and get a second opportunity. We've seen it work for John Hunter Nemechek going all the way back to Truck Series this year, going out, winning races, being a championship level driver, generating that interest in his name again. That could be something that works for DiBenedetto, maybe not as far to the Truck Series, just given how much older he is than Nemechek, going down to Xfinity.
Would you say he needs to prove himself now? Do you think that would be a decent option for him to go down to, I wouldn't say Truck Series, I think that's unrealistic, but Xfinity, would you say like if he got a Penske, or maybe not a Penske because of this, how it's all ended here, but a Gibbs or even a Colleague, do you think that would be a better option for him than, let's say, a back marker front row team or something like that in Cup?
That's exactly where it lies, right? It depends whether you value being in the Cup Series and doing so, even if it is with a 25th place team, more than going to the Xfinity level and being with a top level team. We saw with John Hunter Nemechek, he valued being with a top level team in a lower series more than doing the mid-pack back marker stuff with Front Row Motorsports. We've seen it work the opposite for other drivers. You think like Alex Bowman, for example, he ran at the back, was a test driver for Hendrick Motorsports, got his opportunity, took basically a year off being their test driver, knowing he would get the opportunity in the future. So you can look at both opportunities. Hell, even Matt DiBenedetto has been an example of doing the back marker thing is working. At this point, I think it would be better for him to go and win races than it would be to do the middle back marker thing, just because there isn't. there isn't that upper tier mid-pack team looking for a driver unless there's something surprising that happens. So given that, I think it would be better for him to go to like a Joe Gibbs Racing, go take one of those seats potentially on what happens there, because they could have 3, they could have 4 seats. We don't really know what happens with the 54 into next season, but let's just say for whatever, they do go with the 4 cars. They still keep 4 cars around, and then they have kind of the extra one as kind of like a one-off thing for either prospects or cup drivers, whatever, because as of right now, we don't expect Kyle Busch to be in a car, and for that reason to have the extra car, and given the crew chiefs that they have and everything like that, it would make sense for them to keep the 4. So let's say Ty Gibbs gets one of those seats. Let's say John Hunter Nemechek gets one of those seats. Let's say Brandon Jones has one of those seats. You're still looking at that 4th car there, and what
car,
potentially,
whatever number it is.
Yeah, and Daniel Hemrick could potentially stay around there. I doubt it. I think he's probably one and done and tries to look to get back to Cup after the season if he can find kind of a middle back marker kind of thing, because Daniel Hemrick is that kind of guy that has now done that run at the front and go back to Cup and kind of know your place kind of thing. Yeah, I think it could Joe Gibbs Racing take Matt DiBenedetto in the 54, given their previous ties, everything like that. Potentially. Could he go to Colleague Racing, do part-time stuff, split that car with AJ Allmendinger, or even run full-time for them in Cup, or do the full-time thing for Colleague in Xfinity, run part-time with them in the, because they do have to run the second charter full-time, run the other races other than the road courses, something like that. Maybe that's an option, but it's kind of like finding those kind of unique scenarios at this point. There isn't a lot available for him. That makes a lot of sense. We thought at the beginning of the year that Roush was kind of like the fallback plan, but then Roush goes out and gets Brad Keselowski as an owner driver and all this kind of stuff, and throws even the backup plan out to dry. So I really don't know what ends up happening for Matt DiBenedetto. It's a tough card he's been dealt, but these are the cards he's been dealt. So I don't know if you see anywhere as like a favorite landing spot, but I see a lot of question marks. I don't see anything really that make a lot of sense for kind of everybody involved.
There's no definitive answer for him right now. No. And I think the only plus, if you want to look at it from an optimistic point of view, is he's found out in July that he's not going to be there. Has some time to scrape something together.
It feels like silly season starting early and earlier every year, right? So even with that, and I know some of the seats he wouldn't have been in conversation for or whatever, but it still feels, even though it is earlier in the game, there are seats available, it still somehow feels like he's late to the party.
Yeah, I feel bad for the guy. I think he just needs to win something here, get his confidence back up a little bit, build himself back up. And, we've heard for a long time that there's so much untapped potential here with Matt DiBenedetto. And if he just got that one ride, if he got that opportunity, he would prove himself. And I think he's done that to an extent. Don't get me wrong, just not quite there all the way. And I think honestly, an Xfinity Series ride, like you said, he has to swallow his pride. And the good thing about the schedule is they're very compatible right now. We don't know what's going to happen next season, but if it stays somewhat in the range of like 30 of the same weeks as the Cup Series to the Xfinity Series for next season, in all likelihood, it probably will. You're going to get the same amount of reps, just shorter races, but in much better equipment. And you can go out there and honestly go and try and win a damn Xfinity Series title and try and add that to your resume. And then people will be coming and calling, and he's going to get some sort of offer if he can just perform down there. That's all he needs to do. It may sound simple from our perspective. It's a lot harder than what we're trying to explain here. But if he got that opportunity, and I think he would do a good job with it.
I do as well. And it's unfortunate that that's the reality of situations where there's only a couple of teams that value kind of what those mid-pack back marker drivers can do when they exceed that level. It's very much kind of who's in our system, take the next prospect.
It's a prospect game.
Who's winning, that kind of thing. It's all about money. It's a prospect game, and obviously the money as well. But if he can go and win races and stuff and build up that resume for himself, I think that's probably going to do him the best at this point. But what I will say is, since the crew chief changed to Jonathan Hassler, things have been looking much more improved for this team. You look at leading laps at Road America, finishing top 10 there. They looked like they had no speed whatsoever on road courses. And we know Matt DiBenedetto is a good road course racer because he has done well in the past, both in the 95 car at the Cup Series level and also the spot start that he did for JGR a couple years back now at the previously mentioned Road America. Goes out, finishes top 10 at Atlanta as well. So it looks like they're on the up. We'll see if things can go in a way that maybe they somehow get a win or something the rest of the season. Maybe they can just be very consistent at the end of the season and kind of build up something going into next year. But Matt DiBenedetto, he's a perfectly average racer in terms of the speed he brings, in terms of the passing ability he brings. The one kind of specialized skill he has is that restart ability. Based on retention rates, he's been top 5 the past couple of seasons, has been very, very strong in that realm, which has really helped with his 550 package results as well, which we've seen like things with second places at Las Vegas, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's nice to see them have that speed back at road courses. So hopefully that helps these next couple of weeks after the Olympics, and we'll see what they can do there. But definitely a tough blow for Matt DiBenedetto here. And I'm fascinated to see where he ends up, because I really don't have any clue.
I don't think anybody really does. I think everybody's in the dark just as much as Matt DiBenedetto is right now. So I hope he gets something decent for next season, whether that's in a decent Cup Series ride where he can compete a little bit.
I honestly do hope he does do the Xfinity thing. I think it's best for him at this point in his career to go down, prove people he can win races, kind of rebuild his name, because it does feel like his stock was at its highest after that Bristol race with the 95 car when they nearly won. He gets the 21 ride shortly after that. His stock is honestly excessively
Super
high
speedway
at that
stuff
point.
Too. Like sometimes he shows some glimpses there.
Yep, we've seen it at Talladega the last couple of times, but
exactly.
It feels like, or at least I think things got a little bit out of hand for what the expectation should have been. People were expecting Ryan Blaney kind of stuff when I feel like that was a bit too much. He's been better than what Paul Menard was. He's been a perfectly fine middle of the road driver.
Is that hard to do?
Still got to do it though.
I know. I got you.
But it's just unfortunate to see the way that things have gone here, losing out on another ride here in the circumstances that he is.
Yeah. Whatever he ends up doing, I'm sure it'll be an interesting one, because I'm just fascinated by the cycle that is Matt DiBenedetto's career.
On DiBenedetto as well, what I don't understand is from a sponsor's perspective, seeing the amount of people that obviously care and are interested in this guy's career, and yet no major sponsors want to get behind a driver like that has that fan support. I don't get that. So
should we sponsor him, Kyle? Should the green flag? Should we just sponsor him?
13 cents that I got in my wallet.
I think that'll suffice, right? Yeah. I think anybody will come knocking on our door for a sponsorship. It's this is an interesting part in DiBenedetto's career. He's not too late in it where he can turn it around. If he takes one year,
he's still young. He's still under 30.
If he takes that one John Hunter Nemechek year, I mean, who was looking at? I thought John Hunter Nemechek was a great driver, but who was really looking at him like people are talking about him now, like in the Truck Series? If DiBenedetto did something at least similar to that in the Xfinity Series, people would be knocking on his door. Like I don't think that there's really a debate in that. So.
And obviously remains to be seen how the Nemechek stuff plays out and what he ends up getting in the Cup Series. I think prior to that, people thought like his ceiling in the Cup Series was like a Chip Ganassi ride, something like that. I think now going back and doing what he's done in the Truck Series, people look at him as potentially a higher end driver.
Give him a JGR car next year in the Xfinity Series. Watch
stuff
out.
Like that later this season, we'll get to see 3 of those at least.
Watch out.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this one plays out.
Absolutely. Big news. Obviously, we had to talk about that in length, and it's going to be it's going to get crazier from here on out. Who's going to buy who else out? Because that's basically what it comes down to nowadays.
What's the next non-Keselowski domino to fall? Because we know Keselowski is going to come eventually here in terms of confirmation. What comes next after that?
Oh man. I think something revolving around Kurt Busch.
I agree. I think we're going to get a Kurt Busch decision.
He's the big one left, right?
I think he's
wherever he goes, it sets some things up. So
exactly. We know the Brad Keselowski domino, all that stuff with the 21 car.
It's Trackhouse or 2311, basically, right? So whoever takes that spot leaves another hole there to be filled. So if Kurt Busch goes to one of those teams, you look at somebody for an option for those teams, and then that's your next 2 kind of thing. But with the win here, capitalize on it, man. Like just try and lever as much as he can and
you've got
negotiate.
The summer break coming up after this week as well. So I think a
there'll
lot
be
of
some
decisions are
news
going to be made
after that. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Kurt's the next domino to fall, because after that, either 2311 or Trackhouse then know to go to their secondary options, because it seems like both of those first options are Kurt Busch, and then you get the dominoes to fall from there. But gonna be, again, we thought this would be a fairly straightforward, silly season. It clearly has not been. It's been a wild ride this entire time, and it seems to just be only getting crazier and crazier.